everybody, just got done watching season 2 of Sonic Prime, and we're just gonna get right into it because I'm fresh off of watching it. So guys, before we do that, make sure to subscribe to the channel with all notifications on, drop a like, and yeah, you guys know the drill. So I think that the narrative about Sonic Prime has definitely shifted a little bit compared from what I saw in season 1 compared to what I now see in season 2. I think we've seen a vast improvement on the show. Now, there's many reasons why I think this, but I will just say, if you didn't see my first season review, if you guys have seen the first season, you kind of know like what the issues are. A lot of people, myself included, have a lot of issues, especially with Sonic Prime, just like the tone of the show and kind of how Sonic is portrayed. I think that in this version of Sonic Prime, season 2, we do see a much better Sonic. He is far less cringe and far less annoying, and I think he's kind of like coming into his own a little bit. So let's get into like the plot of the show, kind of get into what we just saw first, and then we'll get into all the other stuff. I would say that season 2 is kind of like a collectathon, almost similar to like a 3D platformer game, and it's very fast paced. The action is very good in this season. So basically it starts off where we left off. If you didn't see my episode 1 review, we're not going to go too much into that, but essentially Sonic and Shadow are fighting at the end of episode 8 and then goes into episode 9. Shadow shows Sonic a Shadowverse that is basically Green Hill, but it's like ghostified. Shadow then fights Sonic trying to take his tech. Eventually we discover that only Sonic can go into the Shadowverses. Sonic and Shadow team up, and then we're off to Boscage Maze. In Boscage Maze, we find out that 9 has been kidnapped by the Chaos Council. They're all after the shards, and Thorn Rose and Sonic team up basically to fight the Chaos Council. And Sonic does get the shard, but he actually turns back to help his friends, which may have been to his detriment in this current point in time. He goes back to help his friends, which we kind of see that character development a little bit, because the plot synopsis of the show is that Sonic isn't really there to help his friends or whatever. He takes them for granted. So it's nice to see that contrast, but it does get him into trouble when the Chaos Council gets the shard, and then they move on to the next Shadowverse, which is the Water World. Like I said before, it did feel a little bit more on brand for Sonic to actually risk his well-being and risk kind of like the core objective of what they're supposed to do by going out of his way to help his friends. In the pirate episode, Rusty Rose ends up getting betrayed by the Chaos Council. Dread Nux goes totally rogue and basically turns the pirates against Sonic. They fight him trying to get the shard. And episode 3 is definitely a very good action-packed episode. It's just like straight up action. After Dread Nux's betrayal, when Sonic gets the shard, he tries to run away from them, but eventually the Chaos Council do get their hands on the shard, and they go into New York City with Dread. Again, I would say in this episode you kind of see it again, where Sonic goes back to help his friends, which eventually does pay off in the end, which we'll see in the next episode in New York City. So again, we're seeing like really good character development with Sonic. Although he's supposed to be a static character, I get it, but I think for the core audience of what a Netflix show is trying to appeal to, I think it's okay to have some type of character development for some type of series. Even though we know that Sonic is a fully fleshed out character, we don't really know when this takes place in the Sonic timeline, so that's something to keep in mind. In episode 5, Sonic once again teams up with the rebels in New York City to try and get the shard. 9 gets compromised, and then we find out that he helps the Chaos Council create a fake Metal Sonic, a Shadowverse version of Metal Sonic, and I was a little bit disappointed. They did a lot of flashbacks and stuff like that. I thought they would do like a little callback to Metal, like Sonic would be like, oh my god, this isn't the first time I've seen a Metal version of myself. So I don't know, I'm surprised that they didn't go that route. But once we see Metal Sonic, Sonic and Metal Sonic fight, and I gotta say, Metal Sonic is actually more annoying than Prime Sonic. I think they actually did a good job of making Prime Sonic a lot less annoying in the show. I feel like he's a little bit more serious. He has his corny little one-liners and stuff like that in the show, and it's not perfect, but I do think it is vastly improved. So basically, Sonic and all of his friends team up to fight this fake Metal Sonic, but also at the same time, the Chaos Council is building New York City and all of the other Shadowverses, so this is kind of a problem. 9 eventually escapes his captivity, helps Sonic defeat Metal Sonic, and we go on to the next episode. In episode 7, basically, Sonic and 9 are trying to escape with the shard. Where we leave off, though, and this is interesting because we don't get any more development about this, Knuckles and Knuckles start fighting. It was actually pretty funny. And eventually, in episode 7, Shadow meets 9 after they transport into the Shadow Space. Shadow clearly doesn't trust him as they make their way into the fake Green Hill, and they're trying to piece back the Paradox Prism, and the Chaos Council arrives. And then we leave off to episode 8, which is probably the coolest episode. This is where the things really start to unfold. And honestly, I would say that there's not too many surprises because Sonic and Shadow team up to fight the Chaos Council. It turns out that the Paradox Prism is able to slightly restore the reality of Green Hill for a very brief moment moment in time, goes back to the ghosty whatever, and then we see a giant Titan Eggman Paradox Prism, whatever energy Titan thing. What's interesting about that part though is they called Eggman, like the original Eggman, like the Titan of the creator or something like that. So the question is Eggman out there, right? Like, how is there 5 Dr. Eggmans? Like, how, you know what I'm saying? Like, every Shadow Space character in the show is basically not aware of like what else is out there, but there's 5 Dr. Eggmans. So, and I'm pretty sure if I'm like, my memory serves correct, Mr. Dr. Eggman called the regular Eggman Titan like the creator or something like that. So he may still be out there, and he may have been the one that created the Chaos Council. I'm not 100% sure. We're gonna have to see what happens as that unfolds, but let me know what you guys think about that down below in the comments about that theory. Sonic is able to harness the energy of the prisms, which should be something that we'll find out more about as the show progresses into season 3. Low-key, he didn't have emeralds, but I'm like, yo, is he about to go Super Sonic right now? But he basically goes like Prime Sonic, or I don't know what to call him. I guess it's like a new form or something. He takes on the Eggman Titan, and then after it's all said and done, 9 betrays Sonic and takes his shards into the Grim. So with that being said, season 2 is a lot better than season 1, I would say. I think season 1 was more focused on world building and developing the characters. The problem with the show, I think, is that we're only getting 8 episodes at a time. It's hard to tell a really long plot and build up all this stuff with not that much time to tell it. So I think that season 1, especially episode 1, was probably my favorite. I think that this show is actually coming into its own to finally become better than Sonic X. And the reason why I say this is I think that just the overarching narrative is really starting to heat up a lot. I think that there's very high stakes in the show, and I feel like the enemies, like the Chaos Council, they seem like they're almost like seemingly undefeatable, pun intended. But it feels like we've built up this like giant enemy that is going to be extremely difficult to take out. So I do like that. I also like, once again, like I said, the stakes have risen really high. There's a lot of plot twists, a lot of plot turns. We are set up very nicely for season 3. It's no surprise, I think, that 9 betrayed Sonic at the end. I think like everyone in my comment section when I reviewed episode 1, like we all kind of knew that 9 was sus. He hints through it throughout the episode where he wants to build up the Grim. So I think obviously the climax of the show is going to take place in the Grim, and that's where we're going to have to go to next. Now, where we leave off, we don't really know what's going to happen. I think season 1 had a better cliffhanger than season 2, but all in all, I think Sonic Prime has actually developed to becoming my favorite Sonic show. I love Sonic X, and I still like Sonic's interpretation better. I do like that they adapt the adventure games, and I think the characters are all a little bit more on brand, but there's no question that this show has better animation. It's 3D. It's much better put together. There's obviously that overarching central plot to the show. I think the show writers have done a really good job of kind of like developing Sonic a little bit, kind of have a little subplot for each and every single world, which is nice to follow. I would say this is just a much higher quality show. It's hard for me to say though, because I really do love Sonic X, and there really is, I think both shows are really good. I think like just the fact that we're getting like modern Sonic or whatever interpreted in both shows is what we want. It's kind of what separates both of these shows from something like Sonic Boom. You know what I mean? So yeah, overall, I mean, look, the show, it doesn't have like the most complex plot, right? Like I feel like from episode to episode, there isn't really too much to dissect, but it's just like really good though. Very charming. Like it's the animation's good. It feels faithful to Sonic, and I feel like it's just getting better and better with each episode. And I think season 3 is going to be absolutely wild. One thing that's interesting that there's a couple of rogue characters in each Shadow Space. We have Dread Knucks, who's now in New York City fighting the other Knuckles. We have Ninetales, who just betrayed Sonic and is now in the Grim. Rusty Rose has been kind of a wild card here and there, although I think she's good for now. I feel like there's a couple rogue characters out there, so it's going to be interesting to see if they all come together in season 3, or if every single Shadow Space character eventually comes out and fights whoever the final boss is in season 3. But overall, I'm really excited. I think once again, we're set up for a very good season 3. We end off on a cliffhanger as usual, and I think the cliffhanger from season 1 actually got me a little bit more hyped, but overall, I think the quality of season 2 is better. So each episode has a significant bearing on the plot, so that's really good to see. This is going to be a show that I think is going to win over the casual audience, which is what I think Sega is going for. If you hate Prime Sonic, I think your opinion might change a little bit, and I think people that hated season 1 might like season 2 a little bit better, but you're probably going to have to go see for yourself. But I do like that Sonic is getting better and better as the episodes go on, and I absolutely loved at the end of season 2 when Sonic and Shadow teamed up. That was the rawest moment that we got in the show, I think, other than the first episode when they fought each other, probably. In order to advancing like this overarching narrative about like restoring the world and getting the Paradox Prism shards. The first season was basically just straight up world building and kind of just introducing all of the characters and helping us understand. But now I feel like every single episode we're actually reaching towards the conclusion of a really good plot. Now season 3, what's gonna happen? I have no idea. We know that 9 is going to be some type of an enemy or something like that. I don't know, because with all these characters in the Shadowverse starting to kind of meet each other, I don't know if there's going to be one true final boss or true final enemy in the show. Who it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be 9, because I think 9 is a little bit misguided. I think he just like has his own interest in heart, you know what I mean? Like Sonic is going throughout trying to save his reality, but he's going to start to learn a little bit more about these other characters that he's meeting along the way and how they are true sentient beings. So anyways, what do I think about the show? There really was actual progression with the plot. I feel like every single episode in season 2 mattered. And action, the visuals, everything was really good. As far as what I don't like about it, I would say that I don't like the Metal Sonic arc. I thought that was a little bit rushed and that Metal Sonic was extremely annoying. I don't like the characterization of Sonic, but that's just kind of how I thought like in season 1. I think he's vastly improved. And honestly, I don't think he's really, there's not really much to dislike about him in season 2. He's definitely getting better, and hopefully by the end of season 3, he's gonna be like game Sonic, you know what I mean? Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of multiverse stuff in general, but I think it will suffice for the plot that we have going on here. Another thing I kind of disliked about the show was the lack of Shadow, but it seems like in season 2 we got a little bit more, and we finally got to see Sonic and Shadow team up. Like actually, they actually got to fight side by side, so that was really cool. But yeah, like I said before, nothing really overall to dislike about the show at this point in time. It's a vast improvement over season 1. I gave season 1 a 7 out of 10. I'm gonna go ahead and give Sonic Prime season 2 a 9 out of 10. I thought it was amazing. I can't believe what I just watched, how much better it actually got. I really had little to no faith in the show, but it really did progress nicely. So I wonder what's going to happen, man. The Chaos Emeralds are missing. We have a bunch of different plots out there. Let's see how they bring it together in season 3 for the supposed finale of Sonic Prime. Excited to see it. Let me know what you guys think about this show down below in the comments.